Hello, everybody. I have another book from one of my favorite authors and illustrators. If you've heard me read Each Kindness, you will recognize that this author and illustrator worked together on that story too. So, Jacqueline Woodson is our author, and something she always did was writing. Some of the places she shared that she used to write were on paper bags. She would write in margins in her notebooks, on her shoes, and with chalk on sidewalks. So she always remembered being a writer. The illustrator, E.B. White, he has illustrated over 70 books for children. And when he was in 6th grade, he actually started taking classes on a Saturday morning in a club called the Saturday Morning Art League. Now, in this story with Jacqueline Woodson and E.B. White, I want you to just notice something interesting about a text feature is how they alternate the amount of space that the text uses on some pages and the amount of space that the illustrations use on some pages. So just kind of notice that. You should know that this is Clover, and she's the main character who's telling the story. She's telling about this fence that you see back here, and you see the other character that's going to be important in the story, and that character's name is Annie. Her name is Annie Paul. And Clover is telling about this fence, and this fence that you see, it actually separates the black side of town from the white side of town. So when we're reading and you're listening, I want you to think about what the fence symbolizes or stands for in the story. And I want you to see what message Jacqueline Woodson is wanting you to walk away with. There's a phrase in here you're going to hear. The character says she lives over yonder, and that means she just lives a little far away, not too far, but it's kind of close enough that you can still see her house. So as I'm reading, again, I want you to be thinking about what does Jacqueline Woodson want you to recognize and understand about the fence and what it symbolizes. I want to show you something really cool. So inside, you're going to see that Jacqueline Woodson signed my book, and it says, "To Brenda, keep knocking down fences." So this story is called The Other Side by Jacqueline Woodson, illustrations by E.B. White. That summer, the fence that stretched through our town seemed bigger. We lived in a yellow house on one side of it. White people lived on the other. And Mama said, "Don't climb over that fence when you play." She said it wasn't safe. That summer, there was a girl who wore a pink sweater. Each morning she climbed up on the fence and stared over at our side. Sometimes I stared back. She never sat on that fence with anybody. That girl didn't. There's the girl in the pink sweater. Once, when we were jumping rope, she asked if she could play. My friend Sandra said no, without even asking the rest of us. I don't know what I would have said. Maybe yes, maybe no. That summer, everyone and everything on the other side of that fence seemed far away. When I asked my mama why, she said, "Because that's the way things have always been." Sometimes when me and Mama went into town, I saw that girl with her mama. She looked sad sometimes, that girl did. "Don't stare," my mama said. "It's not polite." It rained a lot that summer. On rainy days, that girl sat on the fence in a raincoat. She let herself get all wet and acted like she didn't even care. Sometimes I saw her dancing around in puddles, splashing and laughing. Mama wouldn't let me go out in the rain. "That's why I bought you rainy day toys," my mama said. "You stay inside here where it's warm and safe and dry." But every time it rained, I looked for that girl. And I always found her somewhere near the fence. Someplace in the middle of summer, the rain stopped. When I walked outside, the grass was damp and the sun was already high up in the sky. And I stood there with my hands up in the air. I felt brave that day. I felt free. I got close to the fence, and that girl asked me my name. Clover, I said. My name's Annie, she said. Annie Paul. I live over yonder, she said, by where you see the laundry. That's my blouse hanging on the line. She smiled then. She had a pretty smile. And then I smiled. And we stood there looking at each other, smiling. It's nice up on this fence, Annie said. You can see all over. I ran my hand along the fence. I reached up and touched the top of it. A fence like this was made for sitting on, Annie said. She looked at me sideways. Ooh, I wonder if she's going to do it. My mama says I shouldn't go on the other side, I said. My mama says the same thing, but she never said nothing about sitting on it. Neither did mine, I said. That summer, me and Annie sat together on that fence. And when Sandra and them looked at me funny, I just made believe I didn't care. Some mornings, my mama watched us. I waited for her to tell me to get down from that fence before I break my neck or something, but she never did. I see you made a new friend, she said one morning. And I nodded, and Mama smiled. That summer, me and Annie sat on that fence and watched the whole wide world around us. One day, Sandra and them were jumping rope near the fence, and we asked if we could play. I don't care, Sandra said. And when we jumped, Sandra and me were partners, the way we used to be. When we were too tired to jump anymore, we sat up on the fence, all of us, in a long line. Someday, somebody's gonna come along and knock this old fence down, Annie said. And I nodded. Yeah, I said, someday. So as you reflect on this story, The Other Side, I want you to think about how Clover and Annie Paul did something courageous. And I also want you to think about what you would have done if you were one of those characters.